In case you've been living under a rock and you've missed a couple of these clips that have gone viral over the last couple of years, this is the entire conversation happening, at least in the media, about oil, about gas, and about renewable energy. You hear him screaming there, just stop oil, just stop oil. By the way, Les Mis is my favorite musical of all time. I've seen it like 12 times. I sing that song all the time when I'm cleaning my house. Interrupt Les Mis and you've made an enemy out of me for life. But like, honest to God question, what does climbing up on stage during the middle of a Broadway musical production to say just stop oil after you've all spent great money to go see a musical? It's not a hefty, or it's not a light fee. It's a pretty hefty fee to go see a musical in real life. What did this accomplish, if anything?
A 200-year-old historic arch was sprayed orange by Just Stop Oil.
This is in London. This is the Wellington Arch there in London. It's 200 years old. We're now spray painting these historic landmarks with, get this, oil-based paint using canisters, metal canisters that took oil to produce the canisters to hold these paints. We are now spraying 200-year-old historic landmarks and arches because that's the only way that we will be able to save the planet, according to this small group of lunatics. You have got to be kidding me. Like, what do you honestly think you're doing?
Struck again at an esports tournament. So it all started at a Tekken tournament.
And we're interrupting esports tournaments now because video games are directly responsible for the destruction of the planet.
Tournament, which is kind of like Street Fighter, and these Just Stop Oil protesters come and rub orange paint all over the players' monitors, and then she comes in with a little squirt gun and starts spraying the screen. These protests baffle me. I mean, anyone that sees these just hate them. And I feel like when you...
Facts. That's the only thing you're actually accomplishing. Anyone who sees videos like this just hates these people. And honestly, it's sad because it shuts down a productive conversation of, is there a different way or a more productive way or even a more efficient way that we could be powering our society? I don't know. We'll never get there because instead of actually just sitting down and having an interesting conversation about it, these people just have to destroy everyone's private property or public property that's been generationally appreciated for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and then say they're saving the planet in the process.
You're protesting, you want to almost gain sympathy for your cause, but every single protest I've seen for Just Stop Oil is ridiculous. I agree that we need to use less oil, but do I stand with these people? I don't even want to be associated with these people.
Facts.
Why at an esports tournament? That has nothing to do with oil. That's my opinion. What do y'all think?
I'd like to make one thing perfectly clear. We did no damage to the painting whatsoever.
We did no damage to a priceless, historic, original Van Gogh painting by throwing cans of tomato soup at it. I'm sure you guys all saw that clip when it was going live for the first time. Here is the protester for Just Stop Oil explaining how she felt this was her only option, the only option to save the planet.
It's behind glass, and we never ever would have considered doing it if we didn't know that it was behind glass and that we wouldn't do any damage. I recognise that it looks like a slightly ridiculous action. I agree, it is ridiculous. But we're not asking the question, should everybody be throwing soup on paintings? What we're doing is getting the conversation going so we can ask the questions that matter. Questions like, is it okay that Liz Truss is licensing over 100 new fossil fuel licenses? Is it okay that fossil fuels are subsidised 30 times more than renewables when offshore wind is currently 9 times cheaper than fossil fuels? This is the conversation we need to be having now.
But nobody's gonna have this conversation with you if you've just painted yourself in the public light as throwing a temper tantrum by throwing tomato soup on a Van Gogh painting. Like, What? And she admits it to herself that it's really just to seek attention. That's the only actual method that these people are enabling here, because they don't want answers to those questions. They don't want to even facilitate the conversation. They just want to spark the initial attention, the initial outrage, to manufacture your outrage, to make this a trending viral story on the internet to begin with.
Because we don't have time to waste. We're using these actions to get media attention because we need to get people talking about this now. And we know that civil resistance works. History has shown us that it works. I'm stood here today as a queer woman, and the reason that I'm
naturally so important
able to vote, the reason I'm able to go to university, hopefully someday marry the person I love, is because of people who have taken part in civil resistance before me.
They've smashed cake on the wax figure of King Charles III. They threw soup on Van Gogh's famous Sunflowers painting, adhered themselves to a copy of Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, and spray-painted luxury car dealerships with orange paint, all in protest of new oil production sites. So who's doing the protests? Just Stop Oil, a UK-based activist coalition. Their goal is to stop the government from creating any new licenses for the production of fossil fuels, and they're hoping to raise awareness for their cause with these civil resistance protests. The group claims the protests are a powerful way for people to non-violently demand their rights, freedom, and justice. And while they are getting a lot of media coverage, it's not yet clear if the stunts will spark any real change.
So they're saying this is their non-violent way of seeking rights and justice. I don't understand what rights these people don't have that they have to throw mashed potatoes or a can of tomato soup or paint on someone else's property and or in the midst of an art museum to demand. What rights are missing from the conversation here that demand this type of nonviolent outrage? But it's very confusing, and at the very least is completely unproductive, right? No matter what your personal opinion might be on energy sources, if you're like a diehard oil and gas person, if you hate oil and gas and you wish we had 100% renewables, if you wish that we had a better mix of all of the above, which I think is where the average person probably is coming from, no part of this type of activism is actually effective in generating important conversations about what conservation should look like and what environmentalism should look like. Because immediately what comes to mind for me over the last several years is a really destructive level of dialogue that's been happening around the world because we're not able to have a legitimate conversation. Instead, it's just people saying, oil bad, gas bad, everything else good, and I need to cause as much of a temper tantrum to make that known to the world as possible if I'm serious about saving the planet.